Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel and to this series where I'm building the almost peanut scale Pilatus PC6 turbo port. So this is going to be probably the most challenging of the chapters, at least for me, because I'm also going to try to do the tissue covering, which I always struggle with psychologically and physically, let's say, from that perspective. But before I go with that, I'm going to try to do the canopy glass. I've already started, as you can see there. The good thing on this plank is that it does have the template for the windscreen, and I still need to put some plastic covering over the side windows. The good thing, as I say, of this is that I managed to trace it out, and let's see if I can get it out and show you. And then I folded it, bent it where I kind of think it would be, and tried to get it in place. A little bit of a fight, but actually quite good. What I do with for the canopies, I know that you can buy things in shops for that, but basically what I have is this kind of plastic that comes from a toy box from last Christmas probably. So Christmas is coming, so watch out for toy boxes in the rubbish or whatever. And it's quite soft plastic, and it's for free, so there's no kind of waste or anything like that. So this is what at least I use. I do have some sturdier plastic that you can buy in the hobby shop, but that's maybe for more difficult canopies using heat and things like that. So what I'm using now is this, let's say, free plastic. So as I say, I'll figure out how to do the canopy. Then what I still have to do, which I kind of looking forward to, is to put on the top cowling. So I put on 1mm balsa. I have to figure out how to do it that it doesn't get too big, and then carve it down to shape, because this actually gets like a nice rounded shape. Still have the feeling that these are a little bit too big, so I might need to sand them or file them down actually. Once I have the canopy in place, I'll be doing that, and then I hope I don't make the canopy dirty, actually, I'm thinking now. And then it's going to be, as I say, the dreaded part of starting with the tissue covering. Some of you have made the comments about shrinking the tissue first, which is a good idea because I've never done it. So I'll dig out some old tissue from the Guillo's models, probably it's simple white tissue. If I find some colors, I might use it also. I'm especially afraid on the tail surfaces because they're really very flimsy, so that I'll try to shrink it before I use it, and then use it, just put it in with some glue stick, and that's it. And then for the wings, I think they're a little bit more sturdy, but still, if I shrink it on it, I have the feeling it'll warp. Where I might do kind of the classical ways on the fuselage, because I think it's sturdy enough to hold a shrinking, let's say. So I have to figure out what to do first. So step by step. So a brief update on the progress. So I'm in the process of gluing on the canopy. Not completely straight, but I think the wood is actually a little bit crooked. I also put on the side panel just some spots of glue. My concern with this is that actually the wings will actually glue onto that plastic, and that is maybe not the best idea, right? So I've got to figure out how to do that. I'm also not sure how the two wings are going to be connected, so I might still need to re-engineer it when I assemble the wings on, or I might need to put in maybe some. I always have this tendency to would like to put on screws and things, and I think it was Joe saying never put metal on a model if you can avoid it. So let's see how that goes. So anyhow, that's going to stay there, and we'll see how that goes. And then the next step is to start the tissue. As I always say, this is a difficult one for me. I've taken one of these packs of tissues. This came from the Chipmunk that I'd never used, because I used red tissue on it. And what I've done, because when you open this up, it has some creases, right? And the creases are then difficult to handle. Like if you need big pieces, all well and good, or you have to cope with it. But for the small pieces, what I did, I cut out 3 sections, and I'm hoping that with these 3 sections, I can do basically the whole model. At least all the flying surfaces, so the wings and the tail surfaces. So what I'm going to do now, as per the instructions that I think I understood, is I've got a little bottle here with a sprayer. Let's see if it sprays. I think it does, yeah. And I'm going to spray it, and then hopefully it shrinks, and it shrinks kind of flat. There is my cutting mat, and once that dries, then I'm going to see if I can cut it to shape and put it onto the flying surfaces. So now let me wet it and hope that it doesn't pick up any or too much of the dirt from the cutting mat. And now it's pretty much wet. Oh, one more there. So now the process is, let's wait for it to dry. I don't think it will take too long, and then once I have it, I'll be cutting to shape. I'll put the pieces over and cut to shape, and let's see if it works, and if I don't rip it off when I take it off the cutting mat. Experiments are fun. Just a brief update. So these are the 3 sheets of tissue that I wetted. They come out very, very wrinkly, if you can see. Really very, very wrinkled. And one of them, this one, I tried to somehow iron it out with my hands on the table. Gets a little bit better, but still very wrinkled. I'm kind of disappointed by that. So I've got to think how to flatten them out, maybe glue them to a very flat and shiny surface like a piece of glass or something, then apply the glue to the wooden structure, put it on top, wait for it to dry, and then cut it out from there. So that's at least what I'm thinking now, but I'm sure there's a better way of doing this. What I've done, I've taken a piece of glass, I've cleaned it up with some alcohol, I've glued on 2 of the strips of tissue. Just I glued one side, waited for it to dry, I stretched it as much as I dared, and then I glued it down on the other side and held it down so it's hopefully as smooth and flat as it gets. I have here now the tail plane. I've sanded it gently down also, and now the idea is I'll put it onto this, probably as the top edge I think is going to be straight anyhow, and then what I have to somehow figure out, maybe I'll draw it with a pencil if I find a pencil. No, I can't draw it with a pencil because I have to cut it anyhow, right? So what I have to do is then put some glue onto the wood itself, and then I'll present it onto the tissue and hope that it does stay put, that it glues on. And once that is done, I'll be able to hopefully tissue around it, right? So that is at least a theory, and this is all because if I shrink the tissue once it's on the frame, as I normally do, then in this case it's for sure going to warp the structure. So that's a bit of glue onto the wood. I put it here. This method does cause some waste, evidently, which I don't like waste, but maybe it's worth it in this case. So I'm thinking also if I can weigh it down with something. I'm looking around for something practical to use to weigh things down with. Maybe I'll just use this box of pins. And the same I'm going to do then with the tail plane. I've still got to sand this one down a little bit. I haven't done my homework, have I? So at least take the edges off, because then once the tissue is on, there's always that my theory or my thought is always, the tissue will cover it up. With the tissue you won't notice it. I think there are some things like in the internal structure that the tissue will cover, but mostly if there's anything sticking out, then the tissue is going to show it even more. So that's why it's good to do at least a little bit of sanding. Maybe this grit is a bit too aggressive or too new on this fin. It does have a bit of a strange shape, right? The fin of the Pilatus, and then I've got to figure out also how to glue it. It's a very small gluing point, not much contact, let's say. So hopefully I don't need too much glue to make it stay. So anyhow, so that's kind of sanded, and now again I'm going to put it maybe on one side. I think I glued it here. This is the area where it's glued. I'm going to put it here, and I'm just thinking that then for the next step it's also going to be difficult, right? Because if I cut it out of this, then again I'm going to need to glue the tissue down onto the glass and redo the same process. So anyhow, this is basically what I'm going to be doing. This is the tail surfaces, fin, like elevator, and the tail plane and the fin and rudder all together, and then need to put some weight on this. Let's see if this box of pins will do. And then I'm going to do the same with the wings. The wings, I think they're kind of okay already, like in terms of dihedral. I'm going to do typically what we like to do, right, is to put first the bottom sheet, and then the top one. The top one of course is going to have to be kind of freehand. The bottom one I can probably also put on like straight down. I might even do it now, and let it stick there. I don't know if I can fit actually both. It would be nice in the interest of, no, it doesn't fit. So this is going to be quite a lot of waste, I'm afraid. Like we're going to need 2 of these pieces per each wing, but it is what it is. And then basically hopefully have a wing that is functional, not too wrinkly, and not warped. So I'll come back when I have some progress, at least with some of the pieces that are already looking better, I hope. And another random update. So I've managed to put tissue onto the wings. This is one of the wings, I think it's the left one. The bottom side is easy because it's flat, and the top part, what I did, I also glued the tissue to the glass, and then I glued the front part of it, cut it off the glass, the tissue, and then finished on with the top. So I think it's kind of okay. I won't be shrinking it as I say, and of course then this will not be able to fly in moist air. One of the challenges that I see also coming is this is the tail plane. I think it's still a bit sticky from the glue, and then I have to glue, I think, how does this go? This will go somehow like, I don't know if you can see it, like this. So I've got to figure out how I'm going to glue onto the fuselage the fin, because I can't see here a piece actually. So I'm probably going to have to build in a piece of wood that actually allows me to, maybe here, it's going to be here, you can see it. That's going to let me glue this on here. According to the plan, as you can see here, this goes pretty much onto the fuselage, and then on this other part, then I need to glue the elevator, the stabilizer, right? So that's got to think something up there, which adds weight, everything adds weight. Then with the fuselage, I've been having some fun trying to plank in the nose section. It's adding in weight, I suppose, but probably in the nose is the right place to have weight, if anywhere. It says here on the instructions it's 1/20th sheet, but to keep it curved is going to be difficult, so I'm just going like planking it in a little bit at a time. I've put in 3 pieces. I might put in 2 more on each of those places, but even if it's not completely covered, then I'll then tissue it over, so then it won't be a gap there, but at least then it's got some strength there. I've got the pins here in place because they are a little bit curved. I don't know if you can see it. The pieces are a little bit curved, so the pins are holding it in place until the glue sets. And once that is done, then I'll sand down also the nose block, what is here, to try to give it this kind of flattened shape, which is it's going to look different than the plan, let's say it like that, but at least I'm going to try to give it as accurate as possible a shape. So then that's it, and then once this is done, then I'll do the tissue of the fuselage and start the assembling also. So still quite a few small steps to take. So I finally finished carving out the nose. So you can see I managed to carve down the nose block. I think it looks kind of okay. The only problem is that it doesn't quite look like on the plan, right? On the plan we have here a very flat line, and then it goes out into the propeller shaft. I'm afraid if I do that, then actually the piece of paper, the paper that is actually making up this tube will actually then fall out. So I'm going to leave it like this. I've done some engine tests, it's not working too well, but I think worst case scenario I can change the motor mount. What I'm going to do now is then I'm going to start to do the tissue covering on the fuselage. I'm not going to shrink the paper first because I think I can shrink it on it, because I think it's going to have the strength to hold it. I've also put on that last piece of wood in the back to hold up the rudder, and well, the fin actually more than the rudder. And once I have that, then it will be then the assembly. So let me start with the tissue covering. It's going to go probably in sections, and I'll show you progress. And more progress with the tissue covering. Also, apart from the tissue, what I realized that I didn't realize before is that there's a nice shape here to the cockpit area. So I had to, well, I didn't have to, but I wanted to build in these pieces of bolts. I did it from the inside, so it's not as accurate as maybe I would have liked to, but then I thought that it will still look better than just the boxy window shape that I had before. So that's a bit of a oversight on my side. but I think now it's kind of okay, right? As you can see, I've put on tissue on the sides. I'm not shrinking this because I'm not sure if I need it. It's just single pieces. I trace it out on the tissue, and then I cut it out, and then I glue it, so relatively straightforward. And then I cut it out at the corners and then fold it over. Now the complicated part is still ahead of me. Well, I'm leaving this part at the back uncovered in case I need, and it says it here also, I think, do not cover under in case I need to change the motor. Another complicated part will be to cover up the engine cowling. I'm thinking of doing it all white. I'm thinking maybe also, I don't know if I should put maybe some color, maybe some black here on top, or some other color. I can see what I have. I see some yellow lying around, but maybe I can get out something else to give it a little bit of another color. And then the other worry is when the assembly moment comes, is that, as I think I mentioned it already, I've got here the plastic windows, and they're glued to the wood with some, not too much glue. I wasn't thinking of it at that point, but then the windows are going to have to, the wings are going to have to be glued onto those windows. So I think there's going to be a little bit of a weak spot, but I'll see how I fix it or I overcome it, right? So this being the left wing, this should somehow sit like this. I don't know if you can see it, somehow like this, a little bit ahead of the cockpit of the canopy, right? So let's see. I'm really not sure how that'll work out, but anyhow, first I'll do then the nose. I'll do it tomorrow. It's already late today, but taking shape. I think in a few more updates I can close it off, and then it'll just be lying around until I gather the courage to launch it into the air. And getting now very close to the final assembly. So I've managed to tissue all sides of the fuselage. I've added a little bit of yellow because I had it at hand, and I've put a little bit of black, kind of like a glare shield or something for the top of the nose. I think I'm going to leave this part, the paper, as is. I could maybe put some tissue on it, I'm not sure. I think at the moment I'm going to leave it as is. But that is the fuselage all covered. I've also put kind of the only bit of design. I've put the Swiss flag on the tail fin, and now I have to come to the moment where it's going to be the final assembly, right? So tail plane, fin, the tail plane winglets kind of I'll do at the end. Now the more challenging part is to put on both wings in a way that first I don't break them, and that the dihedral is kind of okay. It was when I was carving it, but now with all the manipulation and putting on tissue and things like that, it might have shifted. So that's now the biggest concern. So gluing on the wings that it looks good, and that it flies, ideally that it at least gets a couple of seconds up in the air. Here is the finished airplane. I did putting also the wing spars, not completely in the right place, but I think it's suitable. You see a little bit of the decoration there with the Swiss flag. I'm not putting on any other markings, that's a bit too tedious for me. I still think that the motor is probably underpowered, it's too soft. I probably need some other rubber, or to maybe make another motor with some more pre-turns into it, the better braiding basically. The glue is still a bit fresh, I believe, so I'm still not going to try to trim it in any way, but in overall an enjoyable side project, in between project, in the middle of another bigger project. Enjoyable, small, tiny, but quite fun to build, so I do recommend it. You can find of course the plan on AutoZone, and I think I'll send a picture of this little plane to AutoZone now. Let's see if they post it there, because there isn't a picture there yet. In any case, as always, thank you everybody very much for watching, for following along, and all your tips and tricks and recommendations, and I'll see you next time.